Wells.
Move to approve the staff recommendation to approve both the grant and the loan for Ogilvy. Thank you.
Moved by Director Wells, second by Director Anderson, that we approve the staff recommendation. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Doug. We'll move on to agenda item 9. Jonathan.
Morning, Jonathan Hernandez, CWCB staff. For the record, presenting agenda item 9A. This is a loan request to the San Luis Valley Canal Company. And this is part of the, I'll get into in my presentation a bit, but this is part of the projects that Director Ryan was talking about that he got to tour with the Rio Grande Restoration Headwaters project. This is one of the many ditch companies that have been able to join along with that, the foundation of the project, to get a multi-benefit project done. So this is a loan request for that portion. Again, this is the San Luis Valley Canal Headgate construction. The loan would be $303,000. That includes the 1% service fee. This will be a 20-year term, so it's a reduced percentage rate at 1.45%. Terry Childs is president of the San Luis Valley Canal Company. He's in the audience, as well as 2 of his board members. And then also Emma Resor, who's the director of the Rio Grande Headwaters Restoration Project. So if you have any questions of them, they're both available at the end of my presentation to answer any. The San Luis Valley Canal Company is located kind of a triangle between Monte Vista, Hooper, and Alamosa is their service area. Their ditch takes off just east of Monte Vista. They serve just over 20,000 irrigated acres, 78 shareholders, and in the green on this picture, you can see the irrigated land that this company irrigates. To talk also about the restoration project, again, this is what Director Ryan was talking about. The Rio Grande Headwaters Restoration Project looks to really connect the water users of the ditch companies with a restoration of the river itself, looking at habitat restoration, stream bank restoration, kind of a whole health of the river. And so they really focus on water quality, ag water use, riparian health, wildlife, aquatic species habitat, recreation, and community safety. Kind of trying to take a whole look at, we have these ditches, a lot of their diversions, headgates are in need of repair, but how can we do this looking at kind of globally river-wide? So this is part of the 5 Ditches project, and the 5 Ditches is a grant that was heard back in September. And it looked at 4 projects. One of the projects had 2 ditches involved. That's why it's 5 ditches, but only 4 projects. So you can see the Rio Grande number 2, Consolidated Ditch and Paste Ditch, San Luis Valley Canal, which is a project for today, and then the Centennial Ditch. Not shown are some other ditches that the Rio Grande project has done, including McDonald and Prairie. So this is continuing a succession of different projects that they've had. The Rio Grande, just also kind of give an update, since some of these grants and loans for the other components of the 5 Ditches projects have already been approved. So the Rio Grande number 2 diversion has been completed. You can see a before and after photo, and this really, all they really needed was a new rock vein diversion. So you can see that that was completed just this spring. Consolidated Ditch and Paste Ditch. This is a diversion and headgate replacement. There's before and after of the headgates. The diversion will be completed this fall, but that project is well underway. And then the Centennial Ditch, this ditch has also been completed over the winter. You can see before and after of their diversion structure and their new overmire gates. So lots of successful projects that has been happening here. So the one we're talking about today is the San Luis Valley Canal. You can see the Rio Grande River, San Luis Valley Canal. If this was zoomed out just a little bit more, Centennial Ditch would just immediately be downstream of this. The existing headgate, it's the original. You can see the concrete is just in poor condition. Gates are in poor condition. And then kind of looking downstream from the canal at the headgate, That's the state of the river right now, and some of that will be fixed up, as I'll explain shortly. So here's kind of taking an aerial look of everything to be done. The existing headgate will be removed, will be relocated a little bit closer to the river. The black shaded areas is where the channel will be filled in, just to reshape the river how it used to be. The orange, they're going to realign the bank. And when they do these bank realignments and filling in, they will also be doing rock stabilization, planting willows, and really looking at habitat creation throughout this project area. This company does not rely on a traditional diversion dam. Again, the Centennial is immediately downstream, so I think that helps to check the water up a bit. But they will be installing a rock grade control structure, but that'll just be at grade underwater, mostly just to keep the channel where it is right now. And so the WSRF grant has been heard already. It's already been approved, but I just want to kind of show where the money, where it falls out in this project. So the loan component will be going towards the headgate replacement and some of the construction monitoring, really the ditch company's specific improvements. The grant is going, there was a grant for the final engineering, and then kind of the channel shaping, stream bank stabilization, habitat creation. That's what the grant is more or less going towards. And so in all, the project cost is approximately $569,000. The ditch company's portion of that is $300,000. So with the service fee, that's a loan of $303,000. Again, they're seeking a 20-year term. So we reduced the interest rate for going from a 30 to a 20-year term. And so their interest rate will be 1.45%. You can see their annual loan obligation is just under $20,000, and they will be paying for this through increasing their shares approximately $1.50 a share. The ratios indicate they're an average borrower, which is good for us. The collateral will be their assessment revenues backed by an assessment covenant and their headgate structure, which is essentially the project. And again, I just, for purposes of showing the grant, there was a $32,000 WSRF grant back in May that went to engineering of different projects around this state wildlife area that this is at. And then the implementation grant was the 5 Ditches project back in September. And with that, I will open it to the board if you have any questions of me, Terry, or Emma.
Questions for Jonathan? Oh, Director Wells.
I have a comment. It's kind of the inverse maybe with the comment Director Randall was just making. In the board item, it mentions grants a couple of times, but there are no amounts there. It would help me, because I'm not going to remember, to know what the 5 Ditches grant was for. And you got it up here, but it's helpful to me if anytime a grant is mentioned, the amount is put there, so I can just get a context for how expensive something is. Otherwise, it's just fine. Thank you.
Terry, would you like to address the board? All right. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Terry, and thanks for coming over. We appreciate it. So, any other questions? Director Dutton.
Jonathan, thank you for that presentation. That was very thorough and excellent. Terry and Emma have been talking about this project for at least 4 years. And so even though it takes a lot of time to put this together, I think everyone would agree that it's worth it. It's a wonderful project, and it's going to continue on with all the great work that's been done and that's been discussed this morning. So thank you guys for being here. And with that, I would move staff recommendation on item 9A.
Been moved by Director Dutton, second by Director Wells, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 9A. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Right, thank you, Jonathan. Thanks, Terry. All right, agenda item 9B. Rachel's back up.
CWCB staff. Agenda item 9B, Julesburg Irrigation District Diversion Structure Rehabilitation Project. The project site is located in Division 1, South Platte Basin, very northeast portion of the state. The borrower is seeking a loan amount of $3,308,000 for a 30-year term at 1.70%. I'd like to thank and acknowledge Mr. Larry Frame for making the trek out here for our meeting today. The Julesburg Irrigation District was established in 1904 with 19,129 shares, which is the equivalent of their bonded acres. There are 110 shareholders, and the project site is located, the diversion structure is on the South Platte River at the Peterson Ditch headgate. The Peterson Ditch is about 28 miles long, and it serves Sedgwick County. Can see we kind of zoomed in here. Here's the diversion structure with Peterson Ditch and the existing gate structure over there. The project it was built in wood and concrete in 1956, and the existing concrete has eroded and needs replacement. There's sediment accumulation on the upstream side of the structure, as well as debris can also build up there and create troubles with water flow. The checkboard diversion structure is difficult to operate and adjust the flows, creating a hazardous condition for operators. So with high flows, not only in irrigation season, summertime where we get those high, quick isolated rainstorms, but also in the winter conditions when there's icing. Here are a couple photos here. You can see the concrete degradation and the structure itself. The goals of this project would be to replace the diversion structure, provide stabilization, continue water deliveries to the shareholders, and reduce maintenance, provide safe operations during irrigation and winter seasons. So specifically replacing the 320-foot diversion structure with a bladder gate on reinforced concrete slab, as well as stabilize with pile foundation to help reduce the seepage and protect from future erosion. The Peterson Ditch headgate replacement is a 30-foot headgate structure with bladder gate and new concrete. And the idea would be also to provide a bypass for winter ice conditions. The goal being, again, similar: control seepage, continue water deliveries to reduce maintenance, improve safety, and improve fish passage by creating that bypass there that won't ice up. Total project cost, $3,308,000. CWCB loan with the service fee is $3,341,080. Again, 30 years at 1.70%, with an annual loan obligation of $157,406. The ratios indicate an average borrower. Further increase to the assessment will be required. The district's board of directors will call a special election for this project. They are part of the irrigation law 1905. Collateral, the assessment revenues backed by a rate covenant. And if there are any questions. But
River has a question.
But a question? I didn't understand.
Makes me cry. Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Is
Okay.
there any questions for Rachel? Director Wells.
I may be misreading the photo of the river, but it looks like it's in pretty bad shape downstream of this dam. There's a lot of sediment, or maybe that's normal. I don't know because it's a small photo, but I'm just wondering if any part of this project will help improve that part of the river. The back with the dam, that. So that looks like a lot of sediment. Maybe further upstream it looks just like that. I just don't know. And I'm just wondering if this project will, by any chance, improve river conditions in some other way.
The design is in the preliminary stages itself, and I think the focus will be primarily on replacing the diversion, the 320-foot structure, as well as the Peterson head gate. The extent of that, I think that still might be up for a little consideration. I know that they do want to improve the upstream, and if there's consideration for downstream.
I think Mr. Frame probably could answer that a little bit, but this is not uncommon on the lower South Platte. So that water that you probably see there is only about an inch deep. So it's not that there's a lot of sedimentation to the side. It's just that there's not enough water to really overflow. But most of the time when we have these bladder gates on the South Platte River, they're allowed to drop completely, and that does help flush the sand through the area. So that should help some. But any other questions for Rachel? Larry, if you'd like to come up and come to the microphone, state your name, please.
Morning, I'm Larry Frame, Superintendent of the Julesburg Irrigation District. Jim was correct in his assessment there with the sand below the structure. A new diversion structure would help mitigate some of those issues, but the water is very shallow right there. When that picture was taken, there was not a whole lot of water there. Most of the water was impounded behind the check. I'd like to thank the board for its consideration in this project. This will be our fourth project with the board. All of them have been a great improvement to our system. And any questions of us, I'd be happy to answer.
A lot of people think of me as the lower end of the river, but that's the guy.
Yeah, we are truly the last water hole there.
Yeah. So any mistakes that the river commissioner makes, it hits.
To be plus or minus.
Well, Larry, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Jim.
Long trip, and I really appreciate you making the trip.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think you had a birthday a couple days ago too, so happy birthday.
I'm 41.
41.
I'm a little bit older than that, but thank you.
Well, thanks. Any other questions? All right. Director Wells.
I would move approval of staff recommendation for the loan in item 9B.
Right. It's been moved by Director Wells, seconded by Director Goebel, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 9B. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Larry. So now we're a little bit behind, but we're scheduled for a break. So let's take 10 minutes and we'll reconvene. So.
tax operational grants. For those of you who don't know me, I am also, or my primary role is the managing of the financials for the water project loan program and our $900 million loan portfolio. I wanted to put that plug in. And a number of you are also borrowers, and I see your names come across my desk quite often. Thank you for that. But today, my other hat is to help coordinate the severance tax operational grant program. I had originally planned to talk a lot about the volatility that was going on with severance tax, but apparently you've heard a lot about that already this morning, and Mr. Randall gave us an excellent update on where we are today. And our concern was for this particular program was whether or not we were going to get the $1.2 million. And it looks like we're good. In your notebooks, however, we did, as we usually do, prioritize our grant program in the event that something unforeseen does happen and we don't get the full $1.2 million. So you can either follow along in your notebook or follow up here. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask me now or offline about severance tax or as we go through these particular projects. I like to show this first screen for severance tax. It just primarily gives you a picture of what's going on. Half of the money goes to DOLA, half of it comes to DNR, a quarter of it goes to our perpetual base account for the loan program, and the other 25% goes for the operational grant, or the operational program. It actually has much more than just ours. As you can see on the right there, it's distributed to different agencies: oil and gas, mines, GeoSurvey, us, Parks and Wildlife. A lot of those programs, as Mr. Randall pointed out, were for salaries and operations. So it's very important for us to make sure that we get our money so that we can run those, not lay people off, get those programs continually going. We're happy that they did a great job with the new bill, and we can now move forward. Normally, we present this in March. Our applications come in January. Staff takes a look at them in February. We get together, we prioritize what fits into our program, what does not. How much money do we have? Do we have enough? Do we have to cut some out? So what we've done in your notebook is in table 1, you can see that we have a high, medium, and low. Lows got 0. Board has the option to ask questions as always, but also the other option to decide if you like our recommendations or not. And if you prefer things changed a different way, you're welcome to recommend those. So without further ado, let's get on to the programs. We have staff today which will answer any of the questions for the various applications that we received, any of the programs. I don't normally go through each one of them. We all hope that you've had a chance to look at them, but if you have any questions, if you haven't looked, or if you just want to ask a question about any of these programs, please feel free, and we'll have staff come up and answer your questions. We break them down by section. First section is interstate, federal, and water information. You can see we have 5, and this is only part. Brent has picked up where Ted left off, and we've got about 10 applications just for his program alone. So as you can see, there's the first 5, and I'll ask you if there's any questions on any of those. We can certainly come back if you think of something as we're going along. But in order to speed up the process, I kind of like to just flash them up here and leave it up to you whether you want to ask anything or not. So this is the first part of the interstate program. And our second part are these items right here. And as I mentioned, you have an opportunity to strike out any of these projects you don't like. Staff has asked that you, and highly recommend that you do not strike the first one. because this allows us to have Eric Sky dressed up as a clown and run around discussing water issues at a sideshow for the museum. So if we could, we would appreciate it if we could leave this particular one so that we can get footage for our next documentary. So if there are no questions on the interstate and water information programs, we'll move forward. The finance section has only two programs that they were addressing today, dam safety, or they're both dam safety, both come from Director Ryan's office. Inundation mapping and safety evaluation. Any questions on those? We've had these for a number of years. They're pretty standard, and we like helping out with dam safety. Stream and lake protection has 3 projects they're presenting today. The first one is for temporary help, and the second one is for our outreach and education. Any questions on any of those 3? Okay. Watershed and flood protection has also 3. The first 2 are standard that we've always had, and the last one is new. The last one actually, just as a note of record, it came from a previous board member up in North Platte. And the water supply planning, this is going to be our deputy's first crack at this. She is promoting water project planning and implementation to help with our water plan, which is what most of us are trying to do here and accomplish over the coming years. And each year we receive a number of applications from higher education. CWCB, a number of administrations ago, agreed with higher education that we would recommend and support a number of projects which are more into research rather than actually going out and implementing them. So these come from Reagan-Wascom, excuse me. And we have this year, there's only about 263,000. Usually he puts 350,000 that he requests money for. Because of the volatility, we weren't sure if we were going to get money. I think he cut it down a little bit, which has allowed us to put more money into the other projects. And that's basically it. Does anyone have any questions on any of these projects, programs? And if you look in your notebook, you can see which ones we did not recommend.
Questions for Steve? Guess not. Well done. Thank you.
Well,
Good
thank you.
description.
And I also need to put out there for staff recommendation that the board approve these projects as presented.
Been moved by Director Anderson, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve staff recommendations on agenda and item number 10. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Continue on with agenda item 11, Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund. And Carly.
Thank you, Chairman Jan. Thank you, directors of the board. I'm glad to be here today to give you an update on the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund. So we have been talking to you a lot about the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund in the past couple of months. So I just want to make sure that you are fully aware that this is mostly an informational item. The main thing that I'm going to be asking for you at the end of my presentation is for you to affirm or to consider affirming the need for the ongoing need for the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund. And other than that, most of the duties that you normally do, and primarily looking back at the terms and conditions and making sure that those still meet our needs, that's something that you actually did at our last meeting. So today it's hearing about the ongoing processes and deciding whether or not to continue the use of this fund. So in order to help you make that decision, I'm just going to give you a brief update on some of the wild and scenic processes that are going on right now. CWCB staff participates in wild and scenic processes through two mechanisms. One, through the actual federal agencies' resource management plans, forest plans, planning processes, and by providing comments on those processes. And then secondly, by supporting stakeholder groups with the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund and with our own participation, our own engagement at their meetings to help share the state's perspective on the work that they're doing. So, and there are actually 4 current federal planning processes going on right now. I'll just briefly highlight where we are with each of them. First of all, the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forest, or the GMUG, is something that is currently in process towards the beginning stage of their National Forest Plan revision. And they are at a high level of their planning process right now. They're doing scoping. And so CWCB staff is working on some initial comments on that scoping process. In general, on all of these items, CWCB's position is that you should look to state mechanisms first. You should look to the in-stream flow program to protect those flow values that the federal agencies are trying to protect instead of going through a formal designation process. So we have a state mechanism. Sometimes there's local mechanisms that we can look to, and we try to point the agencies in that direction. And generally, we have really good relationships with those agencies, and that is a successful partnership. That is normally the way that the federal agencies will proceed. So that is something that we've already put forth to the GMUG through their National Forest Plan revision in their draft assessment report, sort of assessing the needs in their national forest area. And it's something that we intend to continue on throughout their process. On the Rio Grande National Forest Plan revision, that's something that we worked very closely with Director Dutton back in December on finalizing a letter. And that letter is available online if you would like to have a copy of that, or staff could send it. In the Uncompahgre field office for BLM, they are in the process of revising a resource management plan. And this has been a long ongoing process, but they actually, we sent our last comments back in October of 2016, and they got back to all of their cooperating agencies about a month ago with detailed responses to those comments. So we have worked through our thoughts on their responses to our comments. I would say generally we feel pretty positive about the way that they've addressed it, but we want to work out some of the nuances with them and make sure that we have full understanding of the way that they plan to incorporate our comments into their plan going forward. And we have a call scheduled with BLM staff on that. And I should say that on all of these, we try to work very closely with the board members of that particular area in order to make sure that our board member is fully informed of sort of what we're doing and gauge our thinking and make sure that we are on the right track. That's particularly true with the BLM Eastern Colorado Resource Management Plan. Jack was really great in helping us speedily comment on the cooperating agency process for them just a month or so ago. They gave us the opportunity to review sort of an administrative draft of their resource management plan and draft EIS. And we had mostly some language tweaks, and Director Goebel really make sure that we were on the right track with that. We got it, and we expect to hear back with the public draft of the RMP and EIS this summer. So before I move on to the stakeholder groups, are there any questions about those 4 federal agency processes? Okay, great. Now, on stakeholder groups, there's really one stakeholder group that's active right now. That's the Upper Colorado Wild and Scenic Stakeholder Group. They are looking at ways to protect segments 4 through 7 of the Upper Colorado River by having, again, more of a voluntary approach and defining what those, what the guides for ORVs, or outstandingly remarkable values, sort of setting the framework for what, as a group, the stakeholders in that region can agree needs to be protected and recognized. So CWCB participates on that stakeholder group very actively. We actually have 4 staff members on that group. And we last met back in March. And we were pleased to hear, and have been hearing for a while, that the ORV indicators and resource guides, sort of those metrics that are the voluntarily defined metrics for float boating, are very close, and we should be reviewing those soon. The other piece of the resource guide pie is the fishing ad hoc group, and that has been slower to develop. I would say the silver lining on that for us is that we recently hired JoJo Law. I think Becky might have mentioned that earlier today. And JoJo has experience on aquatic biology. And so she'll be a really good addition to that ad hoc group on behalf of CWCB. Linda, that was a really brief overview. Is there anything I should add? Oh, yes, Dolores. And that one is more Linda's bailiwick. Can you?
Linda Bassey, Stream and Lake Protection Section. The other stakeholder group is the Lower Dolores Plan Working Group, and they have a subgroup working on draft legislation to establish a national conservation area on certain reaches of the Dolores below McPhee. And that group is still working on drafting the legislation and vetting it with stakeholders. It's been kind of a slow and painful process, but a bonus that has come out of it is the formation of a native fish monitoring and recommendation team. And they're doing some really good work on assessing the results of a managed spill from McPhee last year and figuring out how best to benefit the species that have been identified as ORVs.
Thank you, Linda. In your board memo, we do have a list of the fund expenditures from the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund. So just a quick refresh on this. We talked a lot about this in the terms and conditions discussion, but the General Assembly basically authorized $400,000 to be made available through this Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund every year. And that supports staff travel, but it also supports the Wild and Scenic stakeholder groups like the Upper Colorado and the Lower Dolores. And this funding, it shows how exactly that money has been spent in FY17 and the one estimated request that we anticipate from the Upper Colorado Wild and Scenic stakeholders for FY18-19. So we still are well within our $400,000 budget, total budget opportunity of spending. Are there any questions about the stakeholder groups or the fund itself? Okay, great. So, and then I briefly, we have a brief mention of the terms and conditions. Again, that went through a thorough review over the past year. So this is just getting back on the annual schedule of every single year. We'll come before you and we'll ask you to bless these or make additions or changes at that time. So if there's no further questions, I will state my staff recommendation for you to consider. Staff recommends that the board affirm the need and purpose of the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund still exists and is expected to continue in the future, and affirm that the existing terms and conditions for the allocation of funds from the Wild and Scenic Rivers Fund are adequate without revisions.
Board approve staff recommendation for item 11.
Been moved by Director Dutton, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 11. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Carly, thank you, Linda. All right, agenda item 12. Greg?
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Craig Gabu, CWCB staff. I'd like to reintroduce Alex Funk, our agricultural water resource specialist in the Interstate Federal Water Information section. He'll be assuming management of the ATM grant program, and as such, he will be presenting agenda item 12. Thank you. Alex?
Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As Craig mentioned, I'm Alex Funk, CWCB staff, and this is a ATM grant request and an action item. And bear with me, it's my first time presenting before the board, so it's kind of like a little training wheels exercise here. This ATM grant is from the Rio Grande Headwaters Land Trust, and hold on a second. That's here. And funds requested will go to the development and purchase of a conservation easement on a working farm and ranch in the Conejos County along the Alamosa River. This conservation easement will include an ATM component that will give the city of Alamosa enough certainty of future availability of water that they will be willing to lease that water rather than buy and dry, which is, for those of you that are not as familiar with the ATM grant program, kind of is designed to facilitate and develop alternatives to buy and dry, these legal mechanisms that keep water in agriculture while meeting other water demands. This easement itself will achieve this goal by requiring the landowner to participate in a perpetual lease agreement with the city of 40 acre-feet annually. And the city will use this water to offset the impact of its wells on the Alamosa River, which is now a new requirement under the Rio Grande Basin groundwater rules and regs. Staff supports rights efforts to execute or supports this grant based on the need to execute additional alternative transfer methods. The water plan has a goal of achieving 50,000 acre-feet of ATMs by 2030, and this will go towards meeting that goal. It also furthers the strategy of coupling conservation easements with ATMs, which is identified in the Colorado Water Plan and several basin implementation plans as a means to provide a perpetual water source to other new demands while protecting agricultural working farms and ranches and heritage of these regions. Finally, Alan Law, who's from the Rio Grande Land Trust, can answer more of this if there are any questions, but this project also has the potential to become a template for ATMs in the San Luis Valley, particularly with groundwater users looking to begin to comply or continue to comply with these rules and regs for groundwater depletions, using ATMs as a new alternative mechanism to help address those offsets versus like forbearance and other things that are currently available. And so with that, if there are any questions from the board, I'm happy to take them, and Alan is available as well to answer any questions about the project.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So in trying to get a feel for what percentage of the Miller's water will be leased to Alamosa, how much do the Millers divert, or what's their typical HCU a year?
Alan, would you be able to answer that?
They irrigate about 250 acres of grass and grass alfalfa.
State your name.
Oh, sorry. I'm Alan Law, Conservation Director for the Rio Grande Headwaters Land Trust. They irrigate about 250 acres of grass and alfalfa grass. So they're usually doing about 600 acre-feet a year of irrigation water. Yes.
Gallagher.
Thanks for the presentation. I didn't see in there, are there any statutory restraints on number the 3 and 10, for example, in this program?
They're not going to be using a substitute water supply plan, and instead this is going to be rolled into Alamosa's sort of overall augmentation plan to comply with the new rules and regulations. I believe that there will not be statutory regulations, but if there were, this is still well under, because it's like around maybe 8% of the overall farm's water.
See, so it's not subject to the three years and 10 as we originally rolled out pilot programs. Okay.
Thanks for your presentation. I just So through this conservation easement, all the water will stay on the farm, but only a portion of it could be leased to the city of Alamosa. Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
That's really, in my opinion, the only way to protect agriculture in perpetuity is to do conservation easements, because you can do these deals, but in the end, some of the agriculture could be dried up. And so through coupling the conservation easements with an agreement with another entity is by far the best way to go, that we ensure that this farm stays in agriculture. So thanks for bringing this to us. Director Dutton.
Alex, and thanks, Alan, for being here. We're pretty excited about this project in the Valley because it will be a model for other projects, and just keeping this land in ag, but also allowing flexibility is something that I think a lot of us are really excited about. And I appreciate Wright's efforts to provide flexibility and try to think outside the box. And so thank you for that. And if there are no other questions, I move staff recommendation. What is this? Item 12. Thank you. Item 12.
All right, it's been moved by Director Dutton, second by Director Goebel, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 12. Is there any further discussion? I guess I had one other question. Is there potential to lease some additional water in the future? I mean, is there a maximum that could be leased, or could the whole farm be dried up at one point or another? Or is it just at 8%? Or
we're definitely going to try to avoid situations where the whole farm is rotationally fallowed. That just doesn't. We don't think that works in our basin. We're going to have to negotiate that with the landowners. I would be surprised if we went far above maybe like 10 to 15% of the water. We want to keep some of that extra flexibility, though, in case Alamosa needs more water in the future, but then also potentially for other users.
I did a conservation easement a few years back, and in my conservation easement, there was up to 30% of the water could be at any one time leased for another purpose. So yeah, it would be good to include that in the conservation easement portion, where that maximum is in there. Otherwise, it could end up being the buy and dry thing that we don't want to see. So, all right. All right, thanks. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Move on to agenda item 13. All right. And we have Eric with us for invasive phreatophyte control.
Good morning, Eric Sky with the Colorado Water Conservation Board. First up, before I kind of kick into this, I really wanted to thank Chris Sturm. He really sort of got me involved in this program and coached and mentored and brought me under his wing to teach me all of the ins and outs of grant management at the CWCB, and I really appreciate his leadership. It's ultimately leading me to clowning, apparently, so I really have him to thank for putting that on my resume. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a background on what has been happening recently. This program actually started way back in 2003 with an executive order, and that goes into more detail in your board memos, but I really wanted to focus on this House Bill 15-1006. And in your memos, I did make a mistake. I said House Bill 16, but that's not right. I wasn't properly caffeinated either that morning. So House Bill 15-1006 was supposed to give $4 million to the invasive phreatophyte control program, basically removing Russian olives, tamarisk, Siberian elm, all these invasive phreatophytes from riparian zones and replacing them with more native vegetation. Well, for a couple of months after this bill was signed and came forward, I kind of played the role of grant salesman. I was touring the state saying, hey, you have invasive phreatophytes? Have we got the program for you? And that was largely a success. When our due dates for applications came in November of 2015, we had $3.7 million worth. Now, if we'd have gotten that actual $4 million as we were supposed to, that would have been fantastic. But if y'all remember 2015 and 2016, if you said the word severance tax, a lot of people would cringe, throw up a little bit. It was a bad situation. And this program, when it was all said and done, only ended up getting around just over $1.8 million in severance tax deposits. And so we kind of had this problem. But we knew about it in November when the applications came in. And so we had sort of a discussion of how are we going to fix this. We've got double the amount of money that we have right now in ask. And so we ended up partially funding most of the applications. And we also had a pool of contingent applications if another deposit was made later in that spring of 2016, and that ended up happening, thank goodness. So all the projects that we said we were going to partially fund ended up coming to fruition. And we did have a little bit of leftover money as well from Senate Bill 12002, I believe is what it was. It was our projects bill in 2012. And so when we started this next iteration, we had about $1.9 million to play with and have fun with. What did that end up happening? We ended up getting 22 projects and ended up funding about 1.9 million, just shy of that total amount that was available for these different projects. And that kind of led to some cool stuff too, because we also required a match in this program, both cash and in kind. So we were able to leverage the money that we were putting towards these projects, and we were able to leverage about 1.6 million in cash projects and about 1.1 million in in-kind services, which I think is pretty cool. So now we get to the fun stuff, now that I'm done with all the numbers and all that good stuff. The actual projects, what did we actually get to do? So throughout these 20 projects, they were all throughout the state. I believe there was only a few basins that didn't end up having any applications, but this is a lot of what we saw. You know, over on this left side of these before and after pictures here, you can really see that these phreatophytes just take over the area. And I'm sure that y'all have seen this in your backyards, whether you have the Russian olives or the tamarisk. It just takes over. And so we were able to use these funds and remove a lot of that material that was there. And we were able to use this new opened up space for better recreational opportunities. It was able to reduce some erosion. We were able to get a little bit of water savings out of the deal. It was all well and good. We got some native vegetation back in there as well. Another cool thing that we did with these programs is that we required an educational aspect to each project. And this is really cool because a lot of our projects had youth corps association with them. So we'd have the youth corps come in and do projects. And in fact, later this afternoon, you'll hear from our friend Scott Zigerstrom from Colorado Youth Corps Association. But each of these projects had an educational component. So we'd have these young folks coming in doing the projects. They would learn more about what they were doing. They'd learn more about careers in the natural resources field. And we also had public educational opportunities. So we'd have brochures that were sent out with each project. We'd have open opportunities for folks to come in and take a look. And even had CWCB staff learn how to do some of the restoration themselves, which was pretty fun. This project here, I actually kind of wanted to highlight because I think it's really cool what they're doing. Because of the funding that we were able to provide them through the Phreatophyte Control Program, they now have a way to shuttle students from upriver to this little campsite that they've spent time building. This is basically going to be a campsite for middle school students where they're going to go and spend the week and learn about riparian restoration and learn about these invasive phreatophytes and everything. And it's because of this program that these kids are actually able to get there and enjoy their time there. And I just think that that's really cool. So what do we do now? The problem is this program is actually coming to a sunset in September of 2018. So we were kind of debating, how are we going to do this? Are we going to continue the program on its own, or are we going to leverage some of the programs that we already have through the CWCB to continue this important work? And we decided that the best route to go would be to leverage the programs that we already have. So we have Colorado Water Plan Implementation Grants through the Environmental and Recreational Pool, and we also have the Colorado Watershed Restoration Program. And we really thought that it was beneficial to sort of include this type of work in those programs because it simplifies things for the applicants big time. They're not confused about what program do I go to? How do I apply for all this stuff? It's kind of just all in one shebang. And so we're able to continue this work without the continuation of the severance tax program or trying to come up with a new program in and of itself. And so with all this, our funding does come to an end for this in June of 2018. I know that that's different from the September. The bill was kind of had some interesting dates put in there, but at the end of our funding period, I am going to be writing up a big report of everything that's been happening, all the projects and everything. So kind of like to give you all a chance to mull over what you'd like to see in that report, some other stats you'd like to see and all that. And that's kind of what I wanted to present to you today. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Any questions for Eric? Director Wells?
I have more of a comment about folding this into other programs. In looking at the list of grantees, I was struck by the names that we don't usually see. You know, Pest Control District, Weed Control District, Youth Corps, just different entities than normally apply for our funds. And it's because of the subject matter. And I just want to make sure that we don't lose that completely different. They're not in the water world. They're in a different world. And so I'd hate for something that doesn't, if Phreatophyte doesn't appear anywhere, these people may not apply. So I'm sure you've thought of that. I just am struck by names that are new to us, and I'd like to keep that going if there's some way to do so.
Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. And part of what I've been doing in all my site visits is explaining this new plan and trying to make sure that we don't lose some of that variety of folks that are coming in and working with us. We already heard today that it's all about relationships. And so we don't want to cut those off, you know.
Right. Director Dutton?
Eric, it's my understanding that tamarisk, especially when they are a really established stand, will change the chemistry of the soil. And so even when you remove them, then getting native vegetation or other favorable vegetation to come back is quite difficult. So in the final report, I would be really interested to know if that's not the case, or if there have been soil amendments, or just what the people in the field are finding as far as the success of getting desirable vegetation to come back after removing the phreatophytes.
Thank you.
Director Trick?
Thank you for the presentation, Eric. I was wondering, do you have an idea, or will you have an idea of the amount of water savings as a result of these projects, or will that be in the report?
We could definitely include that in the report. I would lean on my friends from Colorado Department of Agriculture to kind of come up with those numbers a little better and more efficiently. We did have, I believe, one study that was kind of looking at what the ET rates are, but it wasn't universal across the board that they looked at the ET rates, but we can definitely look into that. And yeah.
That would be a good thing to estimate how much water savings that might result in. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Eric. We'll move on to agenda item 14, the uncontested 2018 in-stream flow appropriation. All right. We have Rob with us.
Good morning. For the record, Rob Veal, CWCB staff, and I will be presenting agenda item number 14, uncontested 2018 in-stream flow appropriations in water divisions 3, 4, and 6. Some quick background information. On January 22nd, the board was provided detailed information regarding all the field data, studies, and analyses for the 8 recommended stream segments. After due consideration of this material, the board decided to form its intent to appropriate 8 stream segments. Pursuant to Rule 5D of the rules concerning the Colorado in-stream flow and natural lake level program, notice of the board's action was sent to the ISF subscription mailing list, requesting anyone to file a notice to contest no later than April 2nd. Staff did not receive any notices to contest on the 7 stream reaches that this agenda item is covering. And as such, staff will be seeking final action today on those. So just to give you a quick review of where these in-stream flows are located geographically. We have Miners and Prawn Creek down in Division 3, Dutchman Creek and Coyote Wash out in Division 4, and 3 recommendations up in Division 6, Douglas Creek, Han Creek, and Lost Creek. So this next slide shows these recommendations in a tabular format, provides information about the water division, stream name, watershed, county, length, upper and lower termini, the flow rates, and the timing. And all this information is exactly the same as what was provided in January and in the board memo. So that's all I have today. I wasn't going to go through each stream again individually, but I can answer any questions if you so have.
If there are no questions, I would move the staff recommendations to make the statutory determinations and establish the appropriation date in item 14.
By Director Wells, seconded by Director Gallagher, that we move staff recommendation on agenda item 14. And can we take all these in one?
Yep, it's all 7 of them.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
And
Thanks,
then
Rob.
while I'm up here, I just want to publicly thank Jeff too for his many years of providing me with mentorship and his generous sharing of all of his information he's learned over his 30 years. So I'm just very appreciative of Jeff. Thank you.
All right, we have agenda item 15. Colorado Water Plan Implementation Update, tap in. Oh,
Hi.
Mara.
Yes. My name is Mara Hardy for the record. And whoa, big changes.
No, it's not.
Oh, right. Sorry. Becky said it's not. Mara McKillop for the record. This is an informational item only. And I'll do a little update on a project highlight for Colorado Water Plan implementation, and then also introduce Devin Buckles from the Water Connection, who's been involved in Tap In and is going to give you some updates on her progress, and she was involved in an event last year. Just an overview for new board members. Tap In is a program that the CWCB launched last year with some great partners, Denver Water, Colorado State University, and the Office of Economic Development and International Trade. And it stemmed from the Colorado Water Plan. There's some goals around trying to connect the entrepreneurial and business community with the water sector to tackle our greatest water challenges with creativity. So Tap In was launched to try to target that. The mission is really to try to connect people around water and bring new voices to the table and to bring some new approaches to how we're tackling these challenges. So we launched last spring and then had 4 events last year. 3 of those events were called reverse pitches. And instead of an entrepreneur having a solution, kind of pitching a client or an investor, it's the other way around. So it's the end user or the community member that has a problem or a challenge and pitches that to the community to try to see if they can get some traction on solutions. So really it's around problems finding solutions, not solutions chasing problems. And so we had 3 of those, and Devin, who will come up in a few minutes, pitched at the first one in Denver in June, and I'll let her go over her project a little bit more. But I wanted to just quickly give you an update. Becky mentioned it a little bit earlier in her report, but just give an update on what Tap In's been up to this year. So we launched 2018 with a really exciting collaborative project. We teamed up with Denver Water and the Colorado State University to come to the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce and Small Business Development Center to bring water to one of their programs. The Small Business Development Center has a program called Trout Tank, which is basically, if you've heard of Shark Tank, it's that for Colorado. So it's an accelerator program and then a final pitch event. And they'd never done anything in water. So we said, hey, Trout Tank, water, let's do it. And it was really fun. We had 12 entrepreneurs, which is great because they cap out at 15. So that was one of their highest classes. And they went through a 6-week accelerator program, which is really around pitch training and business coaching. And then we selected 5 finalists who pitched live in April. And we had a sold out event of over 140 people that came. At the event, there was a panel of judges that picked 2 winners. The winner of the Judges Award was Renew West, who's doing reforestation work. They received $5,000, which was sponsored by Denver Water and the Colorado State University. And then the runner-up was Running Rivers, who received free beer for a year from Miller Coors. I don't know which prize is better. And then also really cool that those 2 winners then pitched at the Water in the West Symposium a couple weeks later. So that was great to give them more exposure. Let's see. Oh, another really cool piece about the program was we did some videos trying to kind of tell the story of these water entrepreneurs and the journey that they go through. And Christy Bodie, who's here, did those videos. She did an excellent job. They're on the Tap In website. A few of them I still have to upload, but they'll be there soon. So if you're interested in just getting a little bit more about the personal side of those entrepreneurs, you can check out the website. And then the next steps for Tap In are we are planning a couple events this year and just sort of in the getting partners and getting it all set up phase. So I'll make sure that the board knows what's happening in the future. So with that, I'll bring Devin Buckles from the Water Connection up to talk about the gutter bin project, unless there's any questions for me about Tap In.
Any questions for Mara? All right.
Thank you.
Welcome, Devin. Just state your name and who you're with for the record.
I am Devin Buckles. I'm the director of the Water Connection, which is the policy and water resources arm of the Greenway Foundation. And thank you so much for giving me time on your agenda today. I do get to tell you about a success story, so this is just nothing but fun. You know, when I heard about Tap In, I knew exactly what problem I wanted to pitch. And that is the problem, whoops, I got a little too excited there, but the problem of urban waterway trash. So it was the perfect problem to take to this Tap In event because it's global in scale, it's pervasive, it's something that all urban communities around the world have to wrestle with, frankly, and there's no definite solution that I've seen that really works to solve the problem. The Greenway Foundation has been tackling this issue for decades, so we work at a couple of different fronts. We have a river sweep twice a year where we engage volunteers to walk the river corridor in Denver, picking up the pieces of trash that make their way into the waterways. So that's, you know, it's kind of a Band-Aid. It's an awareness raising issue. We love it. It's a great event. It doesn't solve the problem. We've been working with the city over decades trying to find a better solution. Between the city and county of Denver, Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, and the Greenway Foundation, we spend $1.5 million every single year going along the river and the waterways, picking up the pieces of trash one piece at a time by hand. So there just has to be a better way. And I know for a fact there's a market opportunity, which is why this fits with Tap In. I know that there's a business opportunity for somebody to make money and solve the problem at the same time. So I don't have a background in sales, but I thought this is great. I did my little 4-minute pitch and it worked. So I'm going to skip to the end and then I'll backtrack and show you some photos. So through the Tap In event, we managed to connect with a business owner in Wyoming, and the name of the business is Frog Creek Partners. We love the name, just right off the bat, they got me. And they have this new product. It's a new innovation. It's a startup business, and they are creating what's called a gutter bin. The gutter bin is a stormwater filtration device that is installed at the stormwater inlet. So its intent is to keep the storm from even getting into the waterway in the first place. He has 3 different models, so it fits whatever kind of inlets your community happens to have. The lower left picture there shows you the original version, and that comes with the steel grate and the bright green cap. The bright green cap lifts up. There's a bag underneath, and you just change out the trash bag like you're changing out the trash bag under your kitchen sink. It's that easy. You can buy that model, or their rendering on the upper right shows you the guts underneath. You can buy the eco version, which is really just the working guts underneath, the bag and the apron on the top, and not spend money on the grate if that's, you know, an issue. But the magic happens in that bag. It's called a Mundus bag, and it filters out 99% of the trash, 99% of the cigarette butts, 70% of the sediment, 70% of the hydrocarbons, and 50% of the heavy metal sediment as well. So we would love this thing if it only captured the visible, tangible trash. It does far more than that. So we were sold. So here's how it came to be. I made my pitch at the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce on June 19, 2017. So I had 4 minutes. And I'll tell you, that was a great event for us because we don't normally have access to a room full of 130 business owners, entrepreneurs, innovators. That's just not, we run in different circles. So for us to be able to access that brain power and say, hey, put your smarts toward this problem was exactly what we needed, because it's not been solved yet. So I made my presentation in 2017, connected with the Frog Creek business owner just 2 days later, because there was a fellow in the room on that day who knew about this startup business in Wyoming. So he did an e-intro for us, which was great. Turns out the business owner was coming down to Denver just a week later. I mean, this is like choreographed. It just couldn't have worked more smoothly. So we had our first meeting with the business owner 1 week after tap-in. And between June and February, we had a series of meetings with the right people in the city to see if this would be something that we could at least get them interested in enough to allow a pilot project. So that was really my goal. So February 22, 2018, we did a demonstration, and I'll show you some photos here in a minute, at Denver Wastewater. So that allowed the business owner to make his pitch to them. And then they agreed to allow a pilot installation of the gutter bins, which we installed in April 18th. And it was strategically in time for the 420 festival. If any of you know about that, that's the big pot festival that happens in Civic Center Park. And they trashed the park. I mean, they left it in such shambles last year, they lost their permit. And so we thought, well, maybe we'll put some of these around Civic Center and see if we can, it's a good test case, right? So we got 5 of them installed around the park. 6 of them were installed at the vicinity of Park Avenue and I-25. Again, a very trashy area that has a lot of runoff from the streets there, because it's right over the river. So that's a good hydrocarbon test. And then my favorite gutter bin is at 15th and Larimer, and I'll show you a photo of that and why it's my favorite. But if you're downtown Denver, go check it out. It's pretty cool. So this is our demonstration day at Denver Wastewater. So the business owner there gave a classroom component with the maintenance supervisors, and he made his pitch to them about what it is, how it works. We took them out into the street and showed them one that was installed in the right of way. And we also had one hanging so that they can see the magic bag and what it looks like, what it feels like, and really talk to them about what it did. So that was our demonstration day in February. And then this is our pilot installation day. This is my favorite gutter bin in Larimer Square. It's got the water connection name on the right side, the Greenway Foundation name on the left, and the logo in the upper corner. It's about this big. And we love it because this model offers sponsorship opportunities. So from our perspective, this allows us to go out and raise money. Other organizations can put their names and logos on these things, and that's a good way to fund it. That's one way to fund it. So if you're downtown, go check it out. It's going to be there for a year because the Denver wanted to run it in a variety of different seasons and see how it functions. It's a pilot in a sense that Denver's testing it more than we're testing the actual product. The product is proven. It's on the market. It's ready to go. I mean, he's going to make some tweaks depending on what the community is really looking for. But basically, the product is proven to work. So just wanted to make that clarification. We went back a month later, so this is last weekend. You can see just within 30 days, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. If these gutter bins weren't there, then all that stuff would now be in the South Platte River. The business owner estimates that because we've had 12 of these installed for 30 days, we're keeping roughly 200 to 400 pounds of pollutants out of the South Platte River in 30 days. So that's significant in my world. That's a game changer. So this again, this is the most photogenic gutter bin. I have a photo of it on my cell phone. I'm like a proud parent. I kind of carry it around. Look what I have. But it really can be a game changer. The impact of this tap-in program just through this, if you look at just this one connection that we made, that has tremendous impact in the South Platte River watershed. We intend to, spread the word far and wide so these things can be installed all over the world if we had our choice. As you know, we have a serious plastics in the ocean problem. So it starts locally. So, but 2 messages. One, just look at the impact of this one connection and then think about the impact of the tap-in program overall. It can be exponentially more significant when you think about the contacts made throughout the state in the areas of water conservation, water storage, water reuse, and water quality. So we just wanted to say thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to say thank you for this program and for the chance to be connected with this business owner that we think is going to actually change the world. Now, bear with me because I want to shift gears a little bit. I want to highlight with my last couple of minutes just 2 other projects that are at the heart of innovation and collaboration. They fit right in with this tap-in theme. I want to circle back with you on the Chatfield Environmental Pool because I was in the room in September of 2016 when you all agreed to fund 600 acre feet of the 2,100 acre feet in that environmental pool. So just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you for that. The funding has been raised for the full 2,100 acre feet of the environmental pool. Pledges were actually in at the end of last summer in August, and the money is now coming in the door for us to convey over to the state. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Just wanted to take the moment to do that. And then also I want to tell you about our Clean River Design Challenge, because this also is at the heart of innovation and partnerships and collaboration. This is a competition that we're running with 3 universities, Metro State University, Colorado School of Mines, and University of Colorado at Denver. We challenge undergraduate students to come up with in-stream trash removal devices. So these are a little different. So this is once the trash actually makes it into the waterway, how are we going to take it out? So we're working this problem from all different angles. And what you're seeing on the screen there are the award winners from this year's competition that just wrapped up in April. And this is a phenomenal experience for the students. They build these scaled models and we test them out at the Bureau of Reclamation Hydraulics Lab in Lakewood. So it's great for them. It raises awareness about the issue, and it gives us some devices that we can actually go forward with and build. The one on the left was first place winner from Metro State University. And I have to point out that was a student club. They didn't even get credit for doing this work. They didn't have access to a professor, nor did they have access to a lab. And their team was half the size of the other teams. So it's pretty impressive. They took first place. Colorado School of Mines took second place with their design in the middle there. And then Metro State again took third. And if you can't tell what you're looking at, those are 3D printed plastic fish heads made out of neon colored plastic. And you can paint them so they could be representing any variety of different species if we decide to move forward with this. And then they're resting on pontoons, of course, because you have to keep the fish mouth at the surface water level to catch the trash. And there's a net on the back where the trash ends up. So it just doesn't get better than this. It's so much fun. And again, it raises awareness, and we get these devices that we can go build. We're building a prototype from the first year's competition, and we're going to get that installed in Cherry Creek before the end of the year. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is all about innovation, collaboration, and partnerships, and that's what the Water Connection is up to. Jeff Shoemaker, our executive director, was asked a few years ago, what is it you do at the Greenway Foundation? Because we work on such a wide variety of projects. And he said, well, in a nutshell, he came up with this slogan, we make stuff happen. So that's the MSH. I hope you all got your stickers that were, yes, we have stickers for you that say MSH. So go do that. And thanks again for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Devin. Are there any questions for Devin?
Can I make a comment? I think these presentations are so important as we're looking forward and looking on how is Colorado's water plan being implemented. These things are hard to measure, and it's hard to get on a spreadsheet, and it's hard to document, but these things are one of the ways that we're considering that implementation is happening. And it's not happening by CWCB, it's happening by the partnerships and the relationships that are created. And we're happy to be a part of that. So we consider this one of those implementation successes. So the ask for the board is when you go out and meet with your roundtables that you message that these things are happening and these may be technologies that can be used in your own basins. And so Devin, we appreciate you being here today. This was so exciting. These are the warm, fuzzy ones that we like to hear about. So we really appreciate it.
I just real quick wanted to thank Devin. She's been so awesome to work with and really fun to kind of be part of the first pitch event and not really know what it was about. So wanted to thank Devin, and also wanted to thank the CWCB, the board. You approved a grant for Tap In, and so you're allowing these types of events and programs to continue on over the next couple of years. So thank you.
Right. Devin, I just had a question. The bags,
yes,
are they reusable, and how often do you have to remove them?
So they're not reusable. I mean, in the future, this company is looking at the possibility of harvesting the hydrocarbons that are caught within the bag. There's a chemical treatment on the bag that catches the hydrocarbons. So in the future, that might be a possibility. Right now, no, they just go out to trash. And ultimately, another phase of the build out of this business would be to capture the recyclables and, sort it. But right now, they don't have the capacity for that. It's a startup, but eventually they'd like to go to that point. Frequency of changing the bags depends entirely on the location. The ones in Civic Center Park, as you could see, were filled in 1 month. Normal conditions would be more like 2 to 3 months to change out a bag. And if you go into a residential area, probably less frequently than that even. So really just depends on the location and the volume of trash that is typically generated, and storm events. I mean, after a big storm event, you'd have more too. Yep.
Did the city commit to changing the bags, or how is that happening?
So right now for this pilot period, the business owner, the business is doing the maintenance on all 12. Ultimately, the city would, if they decide to commit to these, they would prefer to do the maintenance with their own crew. So there's an opportunity for this business to train the maintenance workers over this next year if it looks like they're getting ready to buy some of them. The city didn't fund any of these. The Greenway Foundation and the Water Connection funded 3, one of each model, because we wanted to be the first customer. And that one in Larimer is the first installation in Colorado. So seriously, I'm a proud parent. But then the business ended up funding the balance of the 12 pilot bins. So ultimately, we'd like for the city to, the goal is to get them to actually put some funding into this, and not just the city and county of Denver. But I'm going to say too, if you have the business owner do the maintenance, there's a benefit because they do what's called a CAMPS report, and they'll report the amount of trash, the weight of trash that's pulled from each inlet, which can be valuable in trying to identify upstream issues. Do you have dumpsters overflowing? And, why is this one so full when these aren't, right? So you can do some diagnosis. And also it's helpful for us to prove to funders that they're working, to have those kind of metrics. So I would value having the business owner doing the maintenance.
Gallagher?
Hey, you may have already answered this question, Devin, but is this a prototype, or is this a product that's actually out there that's available for city maintenance to actually purchase online or otherwise?
Yep. This is on the market. This is
What's
ready
the
to go.
price point? I mean, if, for a change out, for example.
And so if you sign up for the service, they have a whole order sheet for different service options that you can sign up for. The actual devices, there's capital costs and maintenance costs. The capital costs vary from, say, $350 for the eco model, where you're buying just the guts, just the bag and the stuff underneath the grate. So it ranges from there up to a more expensive $3,700 or so, for including the grate and the cap that pops up. But the benefit in that model, sure, you pay more, you do, but you can just open the cap and lift out the bag, where the other models you have to move that steel grate on the top, which it weighs hundreds of pounds, which is what maintenance workers do now. But if you want ease of maintenance, you buy the more expensive one and open up the cap.
The replacement bag would be costing.
Replacement bags, let's see, I think they're somewhere still under $100. They're like $40 maybe. Yeah. And so I always encourage people to look at what they're spending. It's not apples and apples. You can't just look at what you're spending now versus what these would cost, because if the city of county of Denver is any example, what they're doing now isn't solving the problem. So it's not apples and apples. You get far more if you spend money on this solution. You're actually addressing the issue. So it's not a parallel. Yep.
I salute you. Very interesting. Probably. I bet the irrigators in the South Platte happy to hear something.
Yeah, well, we're all downstream. So it just keeps right on going if we don't catch it. So, yep.
Thank you.
Thank
and thank you for showing your excitement, because that's what makes this kind of fun, is when something really works out, and this whole tap in idea, the way it's working and how it made connections. So we're pretty excited to
It's
hear
a success all the way around. And if you're interested in gutter bins, just find me. I'd be happy to share more information.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that's the end of we finished strong. So we're a little ahead of schedule. Lunch will be here shortly, but we'll go ahead and break now. And lunch, as always, is for the staff and the board. But I'm sure if you hang around long enough, there's probably some leftovers. So So anyway, we'll go ahead and break for lunch right now, and then we'll reconvene at 1 p.m. Where is
Andrew, where is lunch served right across the